Hey folks, in this episode of the podcast, I sit down with Liza Kraff. We're going to be talking about a new application called Scenery. And if you can believe it, it's all about editing video in the cloud. This is TWiP. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, it's all about Scenery with the head of community over at a company called Scenery. This is Liza Kraff. She's going to be talking to us about the viability of this next generation of non-linear video editing softwares that happens to live in the cloud. And of course, that comes with a lot of bonuses of living in the cloud, like being independent of whatever browser or computer you happen to be located at, and some challenges, I'm guessing. Hopefully she'll reveal some of those as well. Things that editors need to be aware of before they decide to jump into editing in the cloud. We're also going to talk about who the target market is for this software and where you can get it, how much it's going to cost, all that good stuff. So Liza, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Frederick. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're very welcome. You and I, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago talking about just the Scenery and what it's all about. And you're gracious enough to give me a nice demo, and walk me through. And I'm excited. Like every time I see new technologies, not that cloud or software as a service apps are new technology, but who would have thunk it? Right? Back in the day when, like in the old days of iMovie and Media Composer and all those, that one day we'd be able to do all this through a browser in the cloud. That's magic. What do you think enabled that? Was it processor speeds? Or is it just the speed of network connections? Like what do you think enabled us to go from, okay, it has to live on the hard drive, to sure, it can just be a service in the cloud?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's just the way of the world now. Everything's in the cloud, yeah. Right? You're storing all of your files in the cloud. You're communicating through the internet on a daily basis, whether it's Slack or other channels that you're communicating through. And editing was just bound to get there, and now it's here, and it's really transformational. Scenery specifically I'm excited to dive in, but it's a tool that allows you to work wherever you want, really ideally with multiple people in the cloud, as you mentioned. And I'm excited to dive into the benefits of it. And also, of course, as you mentioned, there are challenges with cloud-based editing, but hopefully the benefits outweigh those challenges for people to dive in and start exploring what it's all about.
Yeah. I know a lot of people will think that this is the holy grail of video editing, right? So imagine I can be wherever I need to be and have all my assets available to me and be able to cut right there and do all the things that we could do sitting at a workstation, a regular workstation. We could do it from wherever we are. One of the things you mentioned, you were just talking there, you mentioned the collaboration aspect. And I know Scenery is leaning into that part of it, the collaborative video editing kind of thing. And a lot of the companies out there are like DaVinci Resolve is kind of moved into that area, I believe. Not so much to my knowledge on the Final Cut Pro side, but those other kind of companies are kind of like, okay, yeah, this collaboration thing is important. On the other side of it, folks like me that are very insular and solo operators, I don't collaborate with anybody. I just want to get my stuff done. So I'm curious what the collaboration powers that Scenery has are, and then also, is it only for people that collaborate, or can it also be for solo creators like myself?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think collaboration can be defined in many ways, right? You have your traditional collaboration, whether you're working with a team of 5 people, such as your editor, your assistant editor, your producer, your director, your creative director, whoever it may be. That's one form of collaboration. But then you mentioned that you yourself, you like to collaborate. You don't necessarily collaborate, but you are a solo editor and you're working by yourself. With that being said, you might be collaborating by sharing different files with, folks who are looking at your content, or in post, or maybe you need to collect files from a client, let's say. So
Mhm.
collaboration has many different definitions, and Scenery, of course, offers collaboration on all those different levels as well. So we do support your agile small team. We support your larger team who needs to dive in and has various different collaborative roles. And then we also support people like yourself, Frederick, who are really, honing in on your own collaboration,
Mhm.
whether it's working on various different projects, but Scenery allows you to host all of your different projects in one place to make that collaboration with yourself, so to speak, a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's clean. Yeah, the way that you guys have approached that bit of it, which I'm excited for you to do that demo a little bit later, or actually we're gonna do that in a separate episode. But just the way that the fresh way that you're looking at the collaboration pieces of it, and even templatizing things. I know that's the word I use, but having a template so that if you're repeating or creating a repeated piece of content like a podcast or an episodic video or whatever, you guys have kind of streamlined that a little bit. I'm excited for you to sort of take us through that. Before we dive a little deeper into the app, I want to talk about Scenery itself, the company. What's the history? What's the history of Scenery? Where did it come from? Who built it? Why they built it? What's that or why did they build it? What's the origin story of the company?
Yep. So our founders were playing around with Figma actually during the heat of COVID. And they were playing around in the tool and they said, well, why isn't there video? But like Figma, but for video. So with that came Scenery and the evolution of Scenery, and we've been hard at work for around about 3 years now. We have released into public beta about a year ago. Public beta plus is what we like to say, given that we've got various different customers using our tool at this moment. But I personally resonated with the problem that Scenery was trying to solve, given that I was also a video editor myself at NBC Sports. When COVID came around, we dealt with the scenario of editing in this remote world where all these different roles are completely siloed, and you've got your night shift editor and your day shift editor, and the communication there was just, there was a lack of communication. And Scenery, if there was a tool like that during COVID, I think this it would have solved a lot of our personal headaches or pain points, I'd like to say, in that process of collaboration. So uh, personally, I resonated with the problem that Scenery is trying to solve. But
Yeah.
that's where we're at, and yeah, we're excited to show the world what Scenery is all about.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm happy to help with that showing the world thing. What's the who would you say, the one or two target markets that are sort of the ideal customer for a product like Scenery? You mentioned, your tenure in broadcast sports and all that. Is that the target avatar, or is it the TikToker that's creating videos, or is it a YouTuber, or is it the podcaster that's doing long form? Who would you say the app is purpose built for?
Yeah, so the aspiration is to be for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Right now, we see ourselves we're really good for that agile team of corporate marketers, or let's say a group of podcasters who are trying to create smaller, shorter cut downs from their interview. So you mentioned templatizing. Scenery is really great for taking that 30-minute interview, let's say, and just creating a bunch of different social cut downs. But then also for that corporate marketer, we are really great for, creating those quick product demo type videos, or a webinar cut down, or an interview cut down. So right now that's really our focus. But again, ideally, aspirationally, we want to go after, your broadcasters, your um, big corporate teams working on big feature films or whatever it may be. But right now, yeah, the shorter cut downs, taking it from an interview and building it out is really what Scenery is great for.
Yeah, that's great. And you guys are practicing what you preach in terms of being a distributed company, right? You're not a centrally located company, to my knowledge. You guys are distributed. What does that look like, and how has that been?
Yeah. So given that we're building a remote product, our team is remote. So we are
Yeah.
we are constantly in communication via Zoom and other platforms like, you know, that give you access to communicate properly. But
Right.
um, we are centrally located. A lot of us are centrally located in the Bay Area, but given that we are a remote product, we are also a remote team, which actually makes it really great for testing out our product and navigating the different ins and outs of the product, of what's working in different states or countries. Let's say, we've got someone in France and on our team, or someone's in Canada and I'm in Chicago, and we're editing simultaneously together or asynchronously, but collaborating together. And that's really the benefit of what we're building.
Yeah, is that the future? Do you think that's the future? Just sort of this. I mean, we're kind of in it now, I guess. It's the present, not necessarily the future. But the whole idea of distributed teams, whereas in the past, and maybe it was a distant past, but in the past, you're kind of your workflow as an editor is at the workstation and people bringing you drives or otherwise getting you assets to ingest into the project, and you're editing and showing dailies to people and doing all that kind of in real time in a room with that, other humans or carbon-based life forms around you. Is the new normal going to be this remote work where somebody could just be in their spare bedroom like me, working on a project for a multi-million dollar, billion dollar, A-list
Yeah,
firm somewhere on the East Coast, using Scenery?
I believe so. I mean, you could see how the evolution of editing just has constantly changed and evolved. And to be honest, it seems like all these different AI tools and uh, functionality and capability that allows us to, access all these different tools is in this remote setting, in this futuristic way of thinking about collaboration. So obviously, I'm a little biased given the tool that we're building, but I personally believe so. And I don't. That's not to say that I don't believe, those basic older ways of collecting hard drives is never going to go away, so to speak. I just think we're going to elevate the ways that you can access footage a lot quicker
Yeah.
and just different, yeah,
Yeah,
differently.
I mean, you could say it. You could say it. Those archaic, prehistoric ways of editing video are going to give way to the new of editing remotely on cloud-based solutions like Scenery. So there you go.
Yeah, I was trying to be
Maybe,
polite.
maybe, maybe. But the
Maybe.
other side of that, sure, we mentioned DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut Pro, Premiere, and the others out there. I think that another side of it is this move or movement towards mobile editing and getting stuff done on your phone or your iPad, and in some cases doing full-on professional, high-end professional level production work versus, I'm just going to edit a clip for TikTok or something, which you can do on your phone, doing more serious paid work using mobile devices. Is there the idea, or is it on the whiteboard somewhere in Scenery Cloud HQ to move Scenery over to a mobile device? Is that on the roadmap, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, already you can see that people are, reviewing video on their phone, editing, as
Yeah.
you mentioned, a quick cut down. Of course, right now we are focused right on the desktop editor itself, or in the browser, so specifically, given that editing at its core is, of course, on a something as a desktop or a laptop. But the future
Hmm.
for sure is mobile, and there's no reason why Scenery can't go there, and and Scenery is going to go there in the future. So that's
Yeah.
the goal, and we do have some shorter term solutions on a roadmap for mobile as well.
Yeah, yeah. Watch this space, right? For sure. One of the things I know, some folks that are into video and video editing or maybe thinking right now, or yeah, this looks great, or when they see the app, I know they're going to say it looks great and all that. But one of the questions that's going to come up is, okay, how are you handling 4K or 1080
Yeah.
or even 1080, right? 720,
Yeah.
1080, 4K, 8K in the future. Is an app going to handle pushing that amount of data through that straw of a internet connection pipe, and keeping latency down so that when you're editing, it's not drag, wait, drag, wait. Can you explain that and kind of unpack that for us?
Absolutely. So in Scenery specifically, we store everything in the cloud, as we clearly pointed out. But the key about editing within Scenery is that we boil everything up into proxies. So as you mentioned, that latency and that lag, that's really a headache when you're editing. We're trying to solve for that by getting rid of that and working in those proxies so you don't have to deal with that latency anymore. And when it comes to 4K and getting our 1080p, footage right within the editor itself, Scenery, because it is cloud-based, we do have integrations with Google Drive and Dropbox. So if you're storing your media already in Google Drive, Dropbox, it's an instant cross-load directly from those platforms. And then also, if you have a solid internet connection, your footage will be up in Scenery in no time, and the editing process, as I mentioned, will be hopefully smooth because you are working in those proxies, and you again won't be dealing with that lag and that latency. And then when it comes to the export, when you export, you'll be able to export at that high quality that you imported at as well, so you don't have to worry about not getting the generated quality that you imported at.
Really cool, really cool. So is there the concept of, okay, I gotta transcode this footage into some other format or crunch it down or do something to it before I upload to, Dropbox, which will then kind of sideload into Scenery? Or can I just take the files directly, or is the workflow to take the files directly from your camera or device or whatever and throw them on Dropbox, and Scenery will see them and just do the right thing with those files? What's the preferred workflow there?
Exactly, the latter there, Frederick. If you're storing all your content within a cloud platform like Dropbox or Google Drive, we'll do it all for you on the back end. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to use Media Encoder or any other tool like that to boil it up, into that smaller file type. We'll do it for you, and uh, it'll be up and running within Scenery, depending on the obviously size of the video itself. But you're storing, let's say, 25 gigabytes per file, or maybe it's a terabyte of footage, and you want to ingest it directly into Scenery, and you're hosting all that footage in Google Drive, you could upload it directly from your Google Drive account, leave your computer, go do your thing. You could start editing in some other projects within Scenery while that's being uploaded. And then when that's done, you'll be able to, lock and load and start editing right within the tool itself. So you don't have to worry about, ooh, is my computer, if it goes to sleep, am I going to lose that footage? No, we make sure that that doesn't happen when you're importing directly from Google Drive and Dropbox and other cloud tools like those.
Got it. Got it. So then, so if say I'm using Dropbox, I'm a Dropbox user, so I'm using Dropbox. Uh, is the size of the projects that I can edit in terms of the raw footage that I upload to Dropbox, is the size of my Dropbox account my restriction? Or yeah, I guess that's part of the question. Or as I work this out in my brain, if I decide I'm not using Dropbox, I just want to upload directly into Scenery, I'm assuming I can do that. And if I do that, what are the limitations there in terms of project? Is it limited by project duration or the amount of files you can upload in a given session or window of time? How does all that bit work, and how do we get charged for that?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And we are still finalizing our pricing model. We will be releasing that towards the end of the year, but
Okay.
it will be on a subscription based model. So, depending on the tier that you pay for, you will get X amount of footage. But right now, um, You heard it here first. You could upload as much as you want until we do release, that pricing model. But with that being said, it is going to be at this moment about 25 gigabytes per file in terms of just the capacity of
Hmm.
footage that you can upload.
Which is huge. I mean, that's that's a lot. I mean, especially if you just want to play around with it and kind of get a feel for how this cloud-based editing thing works. That's quite a generous amount of space, I'd say. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. One of the other things, I guess, is when I'm just thinking through like projects that I work on and some different things that I have to publish weekly. The template piece of it is really critical. So yeah, you guys are leaning into that. The other side of it is plugins and those kind of external things to the NLE that I'm using, whether they be for audio or for video, like lower thirds and things like that. Is this a whole new ecosystem for plugin developers to start building or app or plugins for, or will Scenery recognize plugins built for another NLE? And if so, how does that work in the cloud? I have questions. How does
Yeah.
this work?
You have questions, and these are all fabulous questions that I get asked all the time, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So, future roadmap, of course, we will support various different plugins that other tools also integrate with. Right now, we do have certain integrations with tools such as Shutterstock, Pexels. We actually have a Dolly integration as well.
Hmm.
But in terms of the other plugins that you might see in other tools, that's something that we are working towards. At this moment, you will see in the product itself that we have a Google Photos, as I mentioned, Shutterstock, Pexels, and a Dolly integration as well. And we could dive into that in the demo to show you
Yeah.
what that might look like and entail when it comes to photo generation and creating unique images.
Yeah, I want to do that. Definitely. We're doing it in just a second. I want to as we wrap this part of the discussion up, one of the kind of areas that I want to talk about or that I've been thinking about in preparation for this interview was, yeah, so Scenery is a cloud-based application. Lives up there in the cloud with, you know, quite a few other applications that do various things in the cloud. We've all become dependent in a lot of ways on these services, whether it be from Gmail or the G Suite all the way over to, who knows, chat GPT or whatever. There's all these things in the cloud that we're dependent on and using. And I'm wondering, from the standpoint of a SaaS or an NLE SaaS like Scenery, does living in the cloud give you superpowers in terms of being able to connect with APIs of other services that are also in the cloud to allow me, user, editor, to do unique things that wouldn't necessarily be possible with a regular, traditional editor? Or is that a direction that you guys are thinking in? Like one day we could just plug into that service over there, and now we have all that goodness inside of Scenery. How does that work, do you think?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, that is the future, I think, of just editing in general. But in terms of Scenery, you'll see in the demo that I'll show you in a bit here, but right now we look at ourselves as your tool for asset management and storing, editing, but also review. And when it comes to review, it's jumping in, leaving comments, leaving time coded feedback for someone else, whether it is someone who is a solo editor but needs 2 cents from an outside source. And what's there's no better way to do that than just sharing a URL link and giving that to them and them having to jump in versus hey, I'm sending this, I'm uploading it to Google Drive. You're going to have to download it. Then you're going to have to email me with different time coded comments. So, in terms of just living in the cloud in itself, already Scenery addresses so many of those different siloed pain points and headaches that you'll see in your day to day editing workflows. But in the future, it's the possibilities are endless when it comes to
Yeah.
what you hopefully will be able to do,
And
especially in
that,
Scenery.
and yeah, I was thinking about that. That could go in both directions, right? So bringing in data or whatever, plugging into other external apps to bring their capabilities into Scenery is one thing. But I would envision in the future, wouldn't it be cool if, wouldn't it be cool if a developer could instantiate parts of Scenery into their app later, right? Like, for example, for the TWiP community, I use a service called Circle, said circle.so. And wouldn't it be great? They allow video streaming and recording and all that stuff, but no editing or anything like that inside the app. Wouldn't it be cool if you guys, I'm not trying to be business development guy here or anything, but I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if you guys put your chocolate in their peanut butter, brought parts of Scenery in there, little limited pieces to allow them to trim video and to give those people a taste of what the Scenery could be. And then, maybe they sign up for full accounts later. That seems like that now gets really, really interesting. And as a way to ingest and bring more people into this NLE SaaS world, could be cool.
For sure. No, absolutely. And well, first, let me just mention that Reese's are my favorite candy. So anything with chocolate, right? Anything with chocolate and peanut butter, I'm all about. But you're going to see, I mean, even today, you're seeing these editors who are, used to their traditional tools like Premiere Pro. And we know that at Scenery, right? We know that you are used to your workflow. We get that. We don't want to take you away from that. So we are starting to think of different solutions. How can we integrate with a tool like Premiere Pro as that example? So we do have an export as an XML capability. So right now you assemble your, rough cut, your 5-minute interview cut down. You want that in a really good spot. You get that in a good rough cut, good string out. You send it off to 2 different stakeholders, whether it's somebody internally at the team or externally. They give that feedback. You go through a few different feedback loops with those 2 people, and then you export it as an XML, bring it into Premiere, a tool that provides you maybe with the bells and whistles that you ultimately need to push it off. With that being said, Scenery also does have a built-in library of different titles and animations, transitions, effects, basic color correction. But to your point, we are starting to integrate with other tools like Premiere and others like that.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, so definitely we need to keep an eye on Scenery. Let's wrap up this one-on-one bit here and jump into the demo. Folks, if you're listening to this as a podcast right now or watching this on YouTube, part 2 of this interview will be Liza taking us through the app and showing us how video editing in the cloud works, Scenery style. So Liza, thank you for letting me throw all these crazy questions at you. And I hope you're ready. Well, there are going to be more questions as you walk through the demo. I'm just going to brace you.
I love it. Keep them coming.
Thanks for doing this.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate the first half of this conversation, and I'm excited to dive into the demo.
You are very welcome. And for folks that want to try out Scenery right now and don't want to watch the other one, they just want to dive into it, how do they get started with the app? Is it invite only? Is it open to the public now? How does it work?
Yep, you can sign up by going to Chrome is our preferred browser. Chrome, search Scenery.video, and from there you'll be able to sign up and get going on inviting others to your team. Or if you're like Frederick, who's creating a ton of video by yourself, you could still dive in, and Scenery is there for you to create.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, we'll leave it right there. Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, Liza Kraff, for letting me pepper you with all these software as a service NLE questions, and I'll see you on the other side in the demo video. This is TWiP.